The transport ship landed on Viridian Prime with a deep rumble that shook the metal floor beneath Jiwoo's feet. She pressed her small hand against the wall to steady herself, feeling the vibrations travel through her bones. Everything felt too intense, too loud, too much. But she had learned long ago not to show it on her face. The cargo door opened and bright purple sunlight flooded the ship. Jiwoo picked up her single bag and walked down the ramp. Her heart pounded in her chest as she saw the Galactic Coalition Academy for the first time. The building stretched high into the alien sky, made of materials that seemed to shift colors in the light. Hundreds of creatures moved across the grounds, and Jiwoo realized she had never felt so small in her entire life. She stood 5 feet and 2 inches tall. Her black hair was tied back in a simple ponytail. She wore the standard academy uniform, but it hung loose on her thin frame. The other humans on her transport ship had already walked ahead, not waiting for her. She didn't blame them. Everyone wanted to make strong first impressions here. Jiwoo walked toward the main assembly area. With each step, she noticed more aliens around her. Some had scales that gleamed like metal. Others had fur and colors she had never seen in nature. Many stood 7 or 8 feet tall. A few were even bigger. She passed by a creature with 4 arms and rock-like skin. It glanced down at her and made a sound that might have been laughter. The assembly ground was massive. 300 cadets gathered there, representing 47 different species from across the galaxy. Jiwoo found a spot near the back and tried to make herself invisible. It didn't work. A reptilian instructor named Qualthar stood on the raised platform. His scales were deep green, and his eyes were yellow with vertical pupils. When he spoke, his voice carried easily across the entire ground without any speaker system. "Welcome to the Galactic Coalition Academy," Qualthar said. "You are here because your worlds believe you have potential. You are here to become tactical officers, warriors, and leaders, but most of you will fail." Jiwoo felt those words settle in her stomach like cold stones. "This academy does not accept weakness," the instructor continued. "We will push you beyond your limits. Those who cannot handle the pressure will leave. Those who survive will serve the coalition and protect the innocent across the galaxy." After the speech, the cadets moved to the equipment distribution center. This was where Jiwoo's problems really began. The center was organized by species, with weapons and armor designed for different body types. Jiwoo walked to the human section where 6 other humans waited. One of them was Yoon Hana, a tall woman with an athletic build and confident eyes. She nodded at Jiwoo but didn't smile. Another was her instructor, Kang Minho, a muscular man in his 30s who oversaw the human equipment. He gave Jiwoo a kind look that made her feel slightly better. "Take your standard rifle," Minho said to each cadet. "Get used to the weight. You'll carry this everywhere for the next 3 months." Jiwoo reached for the plasma rifle. The moment she lifted it, her arms shook. The weapon was designed for average human strength, but Jiwoo was not average. She had always been smaller, weaker, more delicate than others. The rifle felt like it weighed as much as a small child. She heard laughter from behind her. A massive creature named Brock stood there with 3 of his friends. Brox belonged to the Urgoth species. He stood 7 feet tall with gray skin and muscles that looked like they could break stone. His small eyes focused on Jiwoo with amusement. "Look at that one," Brock said loudly. "The little human can barely hold her weapon. Why did they even accept her?" More laughter joined his. An insectoid female named Velsha clicked her mandibles in what sounded like agreement. "She looks like she would break in a strong wind," Velsha added. Jiwoo's face burned with shame, but she held the rifle steady through sheer willpower. Her arm screamed in protest. Minho stepped closer to her. "Ignore them," he said quietly. Strength isn't always visible, but Jiwoo could see doubt even in his eyes. She managed to carry the rifle to the barracks, but by the time she arrived, her arms felt like they were on fire. She set the weapon down and sat on her assigned bed. Around her, other cadets talked and laughed. Nobody talked to her. The next day, combat training began. Instructor Qualthar divided the cadets into pairs for basic sparring. Jiwoo was matched against a Granthar, a species known for thick skin and natural armor. The Granthar male looked at her with what might have been pity. "I will try not to hurt you too badly," he said. The match lasted exactly 4 seconds. The Granthar moved forward. Jiwoo tried to dodge, and his arm caught her shoulder. She went flying backward and hit the ground hard. Pain exploded through her body, so intense that she couldn't breathe for a moment. The world spun above her. To everyone watching, it looked like a light push. To Jiwoo, it felt like being hit by a vehicle. She had her condition since childhood, a curse that made her nervous system process pain at 10 times normal intensity. What others felt as a tap, she experienced as a hammer blow. Qualthar looked down at her with visible disappointment. "Cadet Han, if you cannot handle basic contact, you have no future here." Jiwoo forced herself to stand. Every part of her body hurt, but she nodded and returned to formation. She saw Brox and his friends laughing again. She saw Hana looking away as if embarrassed to be the same species. She saw dozens of alien faces showing the same expression: dismissal. That evening in the barracks, Jiwoo lay on her bed and listened to the other cadets talk. They didn't know she could hear them. From across the room, "That little human won't last a week," someone said. "I give her 3 days before she quits or gets seriously injured," another voice replied. "Why waste an academy spot on something so breakable?" a third voice asked. Jiwoo closed her eyes and thought about her grandmother. The old woman had been small too, delicate-looking with gentle hands. But those hands had been strong in ways that people never expected. Her grandmother had taught her ancient Korean martial arts in their small home on the colony world. She had taught her that pain was just information, and that information could be used. "You will hurt more than others," her grandmother had said, "so you must learn to move more perfectly than others. No wasted motion, no unnecessary risks. Precision is your weapon." Jiwoo opened her eyes and stared at the ceiling. She had come too far to quit now. The next morning, an announcement shook the entire academy. During breakfast, Instructor Qualthar stood before all 300 cadets with news that made everyone stop eating. "In 3 weeks, Commander Thexaval will visit our academy," Qualthar announced. "He will observe your training and select cadets for his elite squadron." Excited whispers filled the dining hall. Commander Thexaval was a legend across the galaxy. He belonged to the Vrathian species, warriors with natural armor and incredible strength. He stood 8 feet tall and had never lost a battle. His squadron was the most elite unit in the entire coalition. Getting selected meant instant fame and honor. Jiwoo looked around at the other cadets. Their eyes shined with ambition and hope. Even Hana sat up straighter, clearly imagining herself being chosen. Brox pounded his fist on the table in excitement. Nobody looked at Jiwoo. Nobody considered her a candidate. She was just the delicate human girl who couldn't even hold her rifle properly. She was the weakest link in the entire academy, the mistake that somehow got accepted. But deep inside, in a place where pain lived constantly, Jiwoo made a decision. She would prove them all wrong. She didn't know how yet. She didn't know if her body could survive the training, but she would try. Because her grandmother had died protecting people who thought she was just a harmless old woman. And in her final moments, she had told Jiwoo to show them all that looking breakable and being breakable were 2 completely different things. Jiwoo picked up her fork and continued eating. 3 weeks. She had 3 weeks to prepare for something impossible. She had 3 weeks to survive in a place that didn't want her. 3 weeks to show the galaxy what delicate really meant. The training only got harder after the announcement about Commander Thexval. Every cadet pushed themselves to their limits, hoping to catch his attention when he arrived. Jiwoo pushed herself too, but her limits came much faster than anyone else's. On the 5th day of training, during an obstacle course exercise, Jiwoo made it halfway through before her body gave out. She had climbed over walls that felt like mountains. She had crawled under electric barriers that shocked her sensitive skin with unbearable intensity. She had run until her legs felt like they would snap. But on the rope swing across a pit, her grip failed. She fell 15 feet onto the safety mat below. To most species, the mat absorbed the impact perfectly. To Jiwoo, it felt like hitting concrete. She heard something crack in her ribs, and the pain was so overwhelming that darkness swallowed her vision. She woke up in the medical center. The lights were too bright, and every breath felt like knives in her chest. A human doctor stood beside her bed, looking at a data screen with a concerned expression. His name badge read Dr. Park Dae-hyun. 3 cracked ribs, Dr. Park said without looking at her. You'll need at least a week to heal, even with accelerated treatment. Jiwoo tried to sit up, but the pain stopped her immediately. I can't take a week off. I'll fall too far behind. Dr. Park finally looked at her. He was in his 40s with kind eyes and graying hair. Cadet Han, I've been reviewing your medical file. I need to ask you something important. Does anyone here know about your condition? Jiwoo's heart sank. No, she whispered. Nobody knows. The doctor pulled up a chair and sat beside her bed. Chronic neural sensitivity syndrome. You experience sensory input at approximately 10 times normal human intensity, particularly pain. This condition affects less than 1 in a million humans, and yet you're here, in the most physically demanding military academy in the galaxy. Why? Jiwoo looked at the ceiling. How could she explain it in a way that made sense? Because I have to be, she finally said. Dr. Park was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, Your grandmother was Baek Yoonji, correct? Master of Taekyon and Serum martial arts? Jiwoo's eyes went wide. You knew her? I knew of her. I read her research papers on pain management and combat efficiency. She developed techniques specifically for people with your condition. She had it too, didn't she? Tears formed in Jiwoo's eyes. Yes, she taught me everything. She said that my condition wasn't a weakness. She said it was just different information. Dr. Park nodded slowly. Your grandmother was brilliant. She understood something that most doctors miss. Human neuroplasticity is unique in the galaxy. Our brains can rewire themselves, create new pathways, adapt to almost anything. You've spent your whole life training your brain to process pain differently. He pulled up more data on his screen. I've been studying human capabilities compared to other species. Every species has strengths and weaknesses. Wraithians have incredible armor and strength, but they're slow to adapt. Clixer are fast, but fragile. Gronthars are tough, but not very smart. Humans, we're not the strongest or fastest or toughest, but we're the most adaptable. Jiwoo listened carefully, trying to understand what he was saying. Your condition makes you feel everything more intensely, Dr. Park continued, but that means you also sense things others miss. Vibrations in the floor, changes in air pressure, the tiny movements someone makes before they attack. You process all of this as pain data, and your brain has learned to use that data for survival. He leaned forward. Jiwoo, you're not weak. You're different. And in the right situation, different can be incredibly powerful. Before Jiwoo could respond, alarms started blaring throughout the medical center. Red lights flashed on the walls. Dr. Park jumped to his feet and checked his communication device. What's happening? Jiwoo asked, trying to ignore the pain in her ribs. The training simulation system, Dr. Park said, his face going pale. There's been a major malfunction. Within minutes, Jiwoo learned the full story from the emergency broadcast. 12 cadets had been running an advanced combat simulation when the safety protocols failed. They were trapped inside a virtual reality scenario, their minds connected to a program that had become corrupted. If they died in the simulation, their brains would register it as real death. The trapped cadets included Brox, Velshaw, and 10 others. The instructors couldn't override the system. The simulation had taken on a life of its own, creating a tactical nightmare that even experienced soldiers would struggle to complete. It was a hostage rescue mission in a collapsing space station with limited oxygen and enemy combatants. Someone had to go into the simulation and complete the mission to free everyone. But entering meant risking the same fate if they failed. Instructor Qualthar made an emergency announcement requesting volunteers. Several cadets stepped forward, but after reviewing the simulation parameters, Qualthar rejected them all. The mission required someone with perfect spatial awareness, precision movement, and the ability to function under extreme pressure. Most importantly, it required someone who could handle overwhelming sensory input without losing focus. Jiwoo understood what she had to do before her conscious mind even finished processing it. She pulled herself out of the medical bed, ignoring Dr. Park's protests and the screaming pain in her ribs. I need to go, she said simply. You can't, Dr. Park argued. Your injuries, your condition, make me perfect for this, Jiwoo interrupted. You just said it yourself. I process pain as information. I sense things others don't. This is what I've trained for my entire life. She walked out of the medical center, each step sending jolts through her cracked ribs. The pain was enormous, but pain had always been her companion. She knew how to walk with it. When she reached the simulation center, Instructor Qualthar and Kang Minho were arguing with the technical team. They all turned when Jiwoo entered. Cadet Han, Qualthar said, you should be in medical care. I volunteered to enter the simulation, Jiwoo announced. The room went silent. Qualthar's reptilian face showed surprise and doubt. You barely survived basic training exercises. This simulation is exponentially more difficult. I know, Jiwoo said. But I can do this, Minho stepped forward. Jiwoo, this is too dangerous. If you fail, then I fail, she said simply. But 12 people will die if nobody tries, and I'm the only one here who has trained their entire life to function through impossible pain. She looked around the room, meeting every eye. My grandmother taught me that looking weak is sometimes the strongest weapon you can have. Because people underestimate you. They don't see you as a threat. They don't prepare for you. Quelthar studied her for a long moment. Finally, he nodded. If you're certain, Cadet Han. But understand that we cannot help you once you're inside. You'll be completely alone. I've always been alone, Jiwoo said quietly. I'm used to it. They led her to the neural pod, a coffin-like chamber filled with connection cables. Jiwoo lay down inside, and technicians attached sensors to her head and body. The cables felt cold against her skin. Her cracked ribs throbbed with each breath. Dr. Park appeared beside the pod. Jiwoo, your pain sensitivity could be an advantage or a disaster in there. The simulation will feel absolutely real. Every injury will register at 10 times normal intensity. I know, Jiwoo said, but pain is just information, Doctor, and I'm very good at reading information. Minho looked down at her with worry and something else in his eyes. Maybe respect. Come back safe, little sister, he said softly. The pod closed. Darkness surrounded her for a moment. Then the simulation began. Jiwoo found herself standing on a metal platform in space. Through the windows, she could see a massive orbital station, pieces of it breaking off and drifting into the void. Alarms blared. Red emergency lights flashed. She checked her virtual equipment and found standard weapons and tools. Her ribs still hurt even in the simulation. The system had copied her current physical state perfectly, including her injuries. But that was okay. She had fought through worse pain before. Jiwoo took a deep breath and stepped forward into the collapsing station. 12 people needed her. 12 people who had mocked her, dismissed her, called her breakable. She would save them all, because that's what her grandmother had taught her to do. You save people even when they don't believe you can. Especially then. The station groaned around Jiwoo like a dying creature. Metal scraped against metal. Somewhere in the distance, an explosion shook the walls. She pressed her hand against the corridor and felt vibrations traveling through the structure. Her hypersensitive nervous system translated these vibrations into a map in her mind. 3 corridors away, something heavy was moving. 2 floors below, pressure was building behind a sealed door. Outside the simulation, watching through monitors, the instructors and cadets saw something they didn't expect. Jiwoo moved through the collapsing station like water flowing around rocks. She didn't rush. She didn't panic. Every step was deliberate, calculated, perfect. How was she doing that? One of the technical officers asked. The station's layout is randomized. She shouldn't know where anything is. Dr. Park watched the screens with growing understanding. She's not using her eyes. She's feeling the environment. Vibrations, air currents, pressure changes. Her condition makes her sensitive to all of it. Inside the simulation, Jiwoo reached the first junction. Her tactical display showed that the 12 trapped cadets were scattered across 4 different sections of the station. Enemy combat programs patrolled between them. She would need to reach each section, disable the guards, and tag each cadet to release them from the simulation. The first enemy appeared around the corner. It was a Surixian combat program, armed with plasma weapons and armored scales. In a direct fight, Jiwoo would lose in seconds, but her grandmother's voice whispered in her memory. Never fight strength with strength. Fight strength with precision. Jiwoo felt the enemy before she saw it. The vibrations of its footsteps, the displacement of air as it moved, the electrical hum of its weapon charging. She pressed herself against the wall and waited. The Surixian walked past her hiding spot. She counted its steps. 3, 2, 1, she moved. Not to attack the Surixian, but to hit the wall panel beside it. Her fist struck a maintenance access point she had sensed through pressure differentials. The panel exploded with sparks. The Surixian turned toward the noise, and Jiwoo was already behind it, touching her access key to its neck port. The program dissolved. 1 enemy down, silent, efficient, perfect. Jiwoo moved deeper into the station. The artificial gravity fluctuated wildly, making everyone else dizzy and disoriented. But Jiwoo had spent her childhood learning to move while her body screamed confusing signals at her. Disorientation was normal for her. She adjusted her movements and continued. She reached the first trapped cadet in Section A. It was a Clixar female, unconscious and guarded by 2 enemy programs. Jiwoo studied the situation. Direct confrontation was impossible, so she found the environmental control panel and adjusted the oxygen mixture in that corridor. The enemy programs didn't need oxygen, but their sensors detected the change and moved to investigate the source of the malfunction. While they were distracted, Jiwoo slipped past, tagged the Klixar cadet, and moved on. 1 rescued. 11 to go. Section B was harder. 3 cadets were trapped there, including Velsha, the insectoid female who had mocked Jiwoo in the equipment center. Enemy programs crawled all over this section like angry insects. The floor was unstable, cracking under pressure. Jiwoo felt the stress points in the floor through her feet. She felt where the metal was weakest, where support beams were failing. She moved across the unstable surface like a ghost, placing each step on the strongest points. The enemy programs, heavier and less careful, crashed through weak spots and fell into the sections below. She reached Velsha and the 2 other cadets. As she tagged them, Velsha's eyes opened slightly. The insectoid saw Jiwoo's face, saw the delicate human girl saving her life, and something like shame crossed her alien features before she dissolved from the simulation. 3 down, 9 to go. Section C nearly killed Jiwoo. The corridor had partially decompressed and her virtual suit started taking damage. Pain flooded through her body at 10 times normal intensity. It felt like being burned alive and frozen solid at the same time. Most people would have screamed and lost focus. Jiwoo breathed through it. Pain was information. The pain told her exactly where her suit was damaged, exactly how much time she had before complete failure. 43 seconds. She could work with that. She sprinted through the decompressed section, ignoring the agony. She reached 4 trapped cadets, tagged them all in rapid succession, and sealed herself into the next corridor with only 2 seconds to spare. Her suit automatically repaired itself and the pain faded slightly. 7 rescued, 5 to go. The last section was where Brox and the remaining cadets were trapped. It was also where the simulation had placed its most dangerous challenge, a full combat android. These machines were designed to fight creatures like Brox himself, warriors of overwhelming physical power. They had adaptive armor, multiple weapons, and combat programming that learned from each encounter. Jiwoo stood at the entrance to the final section and studied the android through the window. It paced back and forth, its sensors sweeping constantly. Behind it, Brox and 4 other cadets lay unconscious. Outside the simulation, Instructor Qualthar watched with growing tension. She can't defeat that android. It's impossible for someone her size and strength. We need to abort the mission. But Minho stopped him. Wait, watch her. She's not planning to fight it. He was wrong. Jiwoo was planning to fight the android, but not in any way it could prepare for. She entered the section. The android detected her immediately and opened fire. Plasma bolts filled the corridor. Jiwoo moved like wind, like water, like something that couldn't be touched. Every bolt missed by centimeters. She felt the heat of them passing, felt the air disturbance, felt exactly where the next shot would be before it fired. But she couldn't dodge forever, and she couldn't damage the android with her weapons. So she did something that made everyone watching think she had lost her mind. She let it kill her. The android's plasma bolt hit her directly in the chest. In the simulation, Jiwoo's body registered total system failure. Death. Complete shutdown. Her consciousness should have been ejected from the simulation immediately, but Jiwoo had noticed something during her journey through the station. The simulation was corrupted. Systems were malfunctioning, and one of those malfunctions was a 3.7-second delay in the respawn protocol. Most people would lose consciousness during virtual death. Their brains would protect them by shutting down. But Jiwoo's brain had spent a lifetime staying conscious through overwhelming pain signals. Death was just another form of pain. Intense information, she counted the seconds. 3.7 seconds of being dead while staying aware. Her body respawned behind the android exactly as she had calculated. The machine was still looking at where she had fallen, its programming trying to understand why the body had disappeared. Jiwoo used those precious seconds. She moved to the android's back, found the maintenance port her sensitive fingers detected through pressure and temperature differences, and jammed her access key directly into its core processor. The android froze. Then it collapsed. Jiwoo stood over it, her virtual body shaking from the experience of conscious death, but she was alive. She had won through the one weapon that no one could take from her, the ability to endure what others couldn't. She tagged Brox and the other 4 cadets. When Brox's eyes opened, he stared at her in shock. The massive Urgoth warrior was being carried over the shoulder of the small human girl he had mocked as breakable. She carried him through a collapsing corridor, her face showing absolute agony, but her movements never faltering. "How?" Brox whispered before he dissolved from the simulation. Jiwoo reached the extraction point and activated the final protocol. The simulation ended. All 12 cadets were saved. She opened her eyes in the neural pod. Technicians rushed to disconnect her. When they helped her out, she immediately collapsed. Her body had been pushed far beyond its limits. Every nerve felt like it was on fire. Her cracked ribs had gotten worse. She had micro-fractures in her bones from the stress, but she was smiling. Dr. Park caught her before she hit the floor. "You did it," he said with awe in his voice. "You saved them all." The medical team carried her back to the medical center. As they moved through the corridors, Jiwoo saw crowds of cadets watching her. Their faces showed something she had never seen directed at her before: respect, fear, wonder. The delicate human girl had done the impossible. She spent 3 days unconscious, her body recovering from the trauma. When she finally woke up, the first thing she saw was Minho sitting beside her bed. "Welcome back," he said gently. "You've become quite famous while you were sleeping." "What do you mean?" Jiwoo's voice was hoarse. Minho smiled. "The simulation recorded everything. Every movement, every decision, every impossible thing you did. The entire academy watched it. They're calling you the Ghost Walker now." Jiwoo tried to process this information. "And the others?" "Brox and Velsha. They want to thank you personally. Actually, there's a line of cadets waiting to meet you. But there's something more important." Minho's expression became serious. "Commander Thexval arrived at the academy early. He heard about the simulation incident. Jiwoo, he watched your entire mission recording." Her heart skipped a beat. "And he wants to meet you today." Commander Thexval stood in the academy's observation room, watching the recording of Jiwoo's simulation mission for the 3rd time. His massive form was perfectly still, his obsidian armor reflecting the screen's light. Beside him stood his inner circle, Korash, his battle-scarred second-in-command Yix, a telepathic navigator whose large eyes never blinked, and Cho Hyunwoo, the only human in Thexval's legendary squadron. "She dies and stays conscious," Hyunwoo said quietly. "I've never seen anything like it." Thexval said nothing. He simply rewound the recording to the moment when Jiwoo let the android kill her. Most commanders would have called it suicide. But Thexval saw something else. He saw calculation, strategy, a warrior who understood that survival sometimes required passing through death. "Bring her to me," Thexval finally said. An hour later, Jiwoo walked into the observation room. She still hurt everywhere, but Dr. Park had cleared her for limited activity. She wore a clean uniform and her hair was neatly tied back. When she saw Commander Thexval, her breath caught in her throat. He was bigger than she had imagined. 8 feet of pure warrior, covered in natural armor that looked like it could stop artillery fire. His face was alien but somehow expressive, with deep-set eyes that seemed to look straight through her. "Cadet Han Jiwoo." Thexval's voice was deep and resonant. "Sit." Jiwoo sat in the chair across from him. She felt like a child sitting across from a mountain. Thexval studied her in silence for a long moment. Then he asked a question she didn't expect. "Why do you seek to become a weapon when you could pursue anything else in the galaxy?" Jiwoo blinked. "Sir?" "You are brilliant," Thexval said. "The simulation proves it. You could be a scientist, a doctor, an engineer, professions where your intelligence would shine without your body suffering constantly. Yet you chose this academy, this path. Why?" No one had ever asked her this question so directly. Jiwoo looked down at her hands, small and scarred from years of training. "My grandmother," she began slowly. "She raised me on a colony world called New Jeju. When I was 15, raiders attacked our settlement. They targeted the weak first, the elderly, the sick, anyone who couldn't fight back. My grandmother looked like she was one of those weak ones." Jiwoo's voice became quieter. "She was small like me, delicate looking, old. They kicked down our door thinking she would be easy. But my grandmother had trained in martial arts for 60 years. She fought them for 40 minutes while I hid in the basement. She saved 17 people that day, including me. But the injuries were too severe. She died 3 days later." Tears formed in Jiwoo's eyes, but she didn't let them fall. "Before she died, she told me something. She said, 'Show them that we bend but never break.'" She wanted me to prove that looking weak and being weak are not the same thing. She wanted me to protect people the way she protected me. Thexval was quiet for a moment. Then he leaned forward and his eyes showed something Jiwoo didn't expect. Understanding. My people, the Vrathians, almost went extinct 200 years ago, he said. Do you know why? Jiwoo shook her head. Because we valued only brute strength. The strongest warriors led us. The biggest fighters got the most respect. We mocked the strategists, the thinkers, the ones who worked with pain instead of through rage. We called them weak. Thexval's voice carried ancient sadness. Then the Nexus War came. Our enemies didn't fight with honor. They used strategy, tactics, poison, traps. Our strongest warriors fell because they only knew how to charge forward. By the time we learned the truth, only 10,000 Vrathians remained alive in the entire galaxy. He looked directly at Jiwoo. You remind me of what my people lost. The warriors we called weak were actually the strongest ones because they understood that true strength is continuing when everything tells you to stop. Jiwoo felt something shift in her chest. This legendary commander understood her in a way no one else had. But then Thexval stood up and his expression changed. However, understanding you and selecting you are different things. I need to see what you can truly do. He turned to address everyone in the room. In 1 week, during the Academy's grand tournament, I will personally fight any cadet who dares challenge me in the exhibition match. This is tradition. No cadet has accepted this challenge in 17 years. Thexval looked back at Jiwoo. If you can survive against me for 5 minutes in combat, you will earn not just a position in my squadron, but as my personal apprentice. I will train you myself, the room erupted. Korash made a sound of surprise. Even Hyunwoo looked shocked. Commander, you've never offered personal apprenticeship to anyone, the human pilot said. I have never met anyone worth offering it to, Thexval replied simply. Until now. But she must prove she can survive. 5 minutes against me in full combat. Jiwoo's mind raced. 5 minutes against the greatest warrior in the galaxy. It was impossible. Absolutely impossible. She would be destroyed in seconds. I accept, she heard herself say. Minho, who had been standing outside the door, rushed in. Jiwoo, no. This is suicide. Dr. Park arrived moments later. Your body can't handle this. The impact alone could kill you. Even Hana appeared, her face showing genuine concern. Don't be stupid. You've proved yourself already. You don't need to do this. But Jiwoo looked at Commander Thexval and saw something in his eyes. A test, yes, but also a belief. He believed she could do something worth watching. Maybe not survive the full 5 minutes, but something. I accept the challenge, Jiwoo repeated firmly. Thexval nodded once. Then prepare yourself, Cadet Han. 1 week from today. The news spread across the academy within minutes. By evening, every cadet knew that the delicate human girl had accepted Commander Thexval's impossible challenge. Some thought she was brave. Others thought she was insane. Most thought she was about to die. The week that followed changed everything. Cadets who had mocked Jiwoo now approached her with respect. Brox found her in the training room the next day. I owe you my life, the massive Urgoth said, his voice humble. Let me help you prepare. I know Vrathian fighting styles. Velsha offered modified armor padding. It won't stop his blows, but it might keep you conscious longer. Even Instructor Qualthar pulled her aside. I doubted you, Cadet Han. I was wrong. Let me teach you advanced evasion techniques. They won't help you win, but they might help you survive. Hana became her constant sparring partner, pushing Jiwoo harder each day. You're going to need every advantage you can get, Hana said between strikes. I'm not going to go easy on you. A woman named Lee Subin appeared one evening. She worked in the restricted research wing as an astrophysics specialist. I pulled every recording we have of Vrathian combat patterns, Subin said, handing Jiwoo a data chip. Study these. Look for patterns, weaknesses, anything. Jiwoo spent every waking hour preparing. She watched recordings of Thexval's past battles until her eyes burned. She trained until her body screamed for rest, then trained more. She studied Vrathian anatomy, looking for vulnerable points. But in her quiet moments, alone in her room at night, Jiwoo admitted the truth to herself. She couldn't survive 5 minutes against Thexval through normal means. His strength was too great. His armor was too strong. His experience was too vast. She would need to do something unexpected. Something that played to her only real advantage. Everyone underestimated her. 3 days before the tournament, Cho Hyunwoo visited her in the training room. The human pilot watched her practice for a while before speaking. "You can't beat him," Hyunwoo said bluntly. "I've fought beside Commander Thexval for 8 years. I've seen him defeat champions from every major species. You're going to lose." Jiwoo stopped training and looked at him. "I know. Then why accept?" "Because he offered," Jiwoo said simply. "And because my grandmother taught me that you don't refuse an honor just because it's difficult." Hyunwoo smiled slightly. "He's never made this offer to anyone. Do you understand what that means? He sees something in you that terrifies and fascinates him. That's why you must accept. Not to win, but to show him he was right to believe." The day before the tournament, Jiwoo visited Dr. Park for a final checkup. He examined her thoroughly and shook his head. "Your body is already pushed to its limit. One serious blow from Thexval could break bones. Multiple blows could be fatal." "I know," Jiwoo said. "And you're still going through with this?" "I am," Dr. Park sighed. "Then at least let me give you the strongest pain management we have." "No," Jiwoo said firmly. "Pain is information. I need all the information I can get." That night, Jiwoo lay in her bed and thought about the tournament. She thought about her grandmother's final words. She thought about everyone who had told her she was too delicate, too breakable, too weak. Tomorrow, she would face the strongest warrior in the galaxy. Tomorrow, she would probably lose. But she would lose in a way that mattered. She would show them all what delicate really meant. The grand tournament filled the Academy's central arena with 50,000 spectators from across the galaxy. Beings of every imaginable species crowded the stands, their voices creating a sound like an ocean. Billions more watched through live broadcasts that reached across the stars. Jiwoo stood in the preparation room beneath the arena, listening to the noise above. Her heart beat steadily in her chest. She wore minimal padding, just enough to meet safety regulations. Her uniform was clean and simple. Her hair was tied back. She looked exactly like what she was, a small human girl about to face an impossible challenge. Minho entered the room. "The preliminary matches are finishing. You're next," Jiwoo nodded. Through the walls, she could hear the crowd reacting to the other fights. The tournament had been spectacular. Brox had defeated a Syrixian champion in under 30 seconds. A Clixar speedster moved so fast that cameras struggled to track her. Hana made it to the semifinals, the furthest any human had advanced in years. "Jiwoo," Minho said quietly, "you don't have to do this. Nobody will think less of you if you withdraw." "I will think less of me," Jiwoo replied. Minho smiled sadly. "Your grandmother would be proud." "I hope so." The call came. It was time. Jiwoo walked through the tunnel toward the arena floor. With each step, the noise grew louder. When she emerged into the open air and bright lights, the sound hit her like a physical force. 50,000 beings watched her walk to the center of the arena. Most of them looked worried. Some looked excited. All of them thought they knew how this would end. Commander Thexval entered from the opposite side. He wore full ceremonial armor, black as the void of space, decorated with symbols representing his 147 major victories. He moved with the confidence of someone who had never truly lost a battle. The crowd roared when they saw him. The size difference was absurd. Thexval stood 8 feet tall. Jiwoo stood 5 feet and 2 inches. He weighed 4 times as much as her. His armor alone probably weighed more than her entire body. They met in the center of the arena. The referee, a neutral Mindari official, explained the rules. 5 minutes. Full contact. Standard safety protocols. Medical team standing by. The referee looked at Jiwoo. "Are you certain you wish to proceed, Cadet Han?" "I am," Jiwoo said clearly. The referee stepped back. The arena fell silent. 50,000 beings held their breath. The match began. Thexval didn't charge immediately, as some expected. He moved forward carefully, professionally. This was an exhibition match, but he treated Jiwoo like a real opponent. That alone was a form of respect. He struck at 70% power. For most beings, that would be a light testing blow. For Thexval, it was still enough to shatter combat droids. Jiwoo wasn't there when his fist arrived. She had felt the shift in his weight, the tension in his muscles through the vibrations in the arena floor. She moved 3 centimeters to the left and his strike passed through empty air. The crowd gasped. Thexval struck again, and again. Each blow was faster, more precise. Each blow missed Jiwoo by impossibly small margins. She moved like water flowing around rocks, like wind passing through trees. Every dodge was perfect because she felt his movements before he completed them. 1 minute passed. Jiwoo hadn't been hit. She also hadn't attacked. Pure defense, but defense so beautiful that the crowd forgot to breathe. Thexval increased his power to 85%. The arena floor cracked under his strikes. The sound of his fists cutting through air was like thunder. Jiwoo continued to evade, but now she added something new. She began redirecting his strikes. When he punched, she touched his arm at a precise angle, changing his trajectory by fractions. She used his own momentum against him, turned his strength into positioning errors. 2 minutes passed. In the stands, Dr. Park watched with tears in his eyes. "She's not just surviving," he whispered. "She's teaching," Minho understood. "She's showing everyone what human combat really looks like. Not overwhelming force, perfect efficiency." 3 minutes passed. Thexval went to 100% power. This was the force that had broken siege walls, that had stopped invasions. The crowd went silent again. Many closed their eyes, not wanting to see what happened next. His strike caught Jiwoo on her shoulder. She went flying backward, hit the arena floor, and rolled. Blood appeared on her lip. Her shoulder had partially dislocated from the impact. The pain was so intense that her vision went white. But she stood up. The crowd roared. Jiwoo returned to her fighting stance. Her shoulders screamed. Every nerve in her body begged her to stay down. She ignored them all. 4 minutes passed. Something changed in Jiwoo's approach. She stopped defending. She walked directly toward Thexval, entering his striking range. She took a stance that her grandmother had taught her, one from the oldest Korean martial arts. "When the mountain will not move," her grandmother's voice echoed in memory. "Show it why the wind matters." Thexval struck. Jiwoo didn't evade. Instead, she moved with the blow, using its energy to spin and strike back. Her small fist hit his armor at a point she had studied in the recordings, a weak spot where armor plates joined. She pulled the strike at the last instant, using just enough force to touch the neural interface beneath. It wasn't a damaging blow, but it was precise. Perfect. Deadly if she had wanted it to be. In martial arts, this was called pulled death, showing mercy by revealing lethality. Thexval froze. His eyes went wide. 4 minutes and 43 seconds had passed. 17 seconds remained. The commander did something that shocked the entire galaxy. He stepped back. He lowered his guard. He removed his helmet, and his face showed not anger, but profound recognition. "Enough," his voice carried across the arena. The timer stopped at 4 minutes and 51 seconds. Silence filled the arena. Nobody understood what was happening. Had Jiwoo won? Lost? What was this? Thexval spoke, and his words were broadcast across the galaxy. "I have fought for 89 years. I have defeated champions of every major species. I have studied warfare under 30 masters. But today I learned something I never understood." He turned to Jiwoo. "Strength is not the absence of pain. It is the refusal to let pain define the outcome. This human, this delicate creature has endured more agony in 4 minutes than most warriors face in entire battles. Every movement I made caused her pain through her hypersensitive condition. Yet she moved with precision, with grace, with purpose." The crowd began to understand. "You mocked her because she appears breakable," Thexval continued, looking at the cameras. "But she has discovered what all true warriors must learn. We are all breakable. Every being in this galaxy can be destroyed. The question is not whether we can break. The question is what we do with that knowledge." Then Commander Thexval did something that would be remembered for generations. He knelt. The greatest warrior in the galaxy bowed before a small human girl. "Han Jiwoo," he said formally, "you have done more than survive 5 minutes. You have shown the galaxy what humanity truly means. Will you accept my apprenticeship and join my squadron?" Jiwoo stood there, exhausted, bleeding, her body broken in a dozen places. But she stood tall. "I accept," she said clearly. The arena exploded with sound. 50,000 beings roared their approval. Across the galaxy, billions watched as the delicate human girl received the highest honor imaginable. Medical teams rushed to Jiwoo. As they supported her weight, Thexval approached once more. "You taught me humility today," he said quietly. "Thank you." "You gave me a chance when no one else would," Jiwoo replied. "Thank you." 6 months later, the flagship Undaunted traveled through deep space. Jiwoo stood on the observation deck looking at the stars. Her body had healed from the tournament, though she still felt phantom pains sometimes. She wore the uniform of Thexval's elite squadron now, with markings that identified her as his personal apprentice. Behind her, the bridge crew worked efficiently. Korash coordinated tactical operations, Yix navigated through dangerous space, Hyunwoo piloted with casual expertise, and Thexval commanded it all. The legendary Voidbreaker, who had learned from a girl that looking breakable and being breakable were two different things. The entire galaxy knew her story now. They called her the Willow, named for the tree that bends in hurricanes but never breaks. Young cadets from every species studied her techniques. Scholars wrote papers about human resilience. Commanders reconsidered their recruitment standards. Minho had developed new training programs based on her methods. He called it adaptive resilience, teaching that capability mattered more than appearance. Hana served on a station protecting vulnerable colonies, using her skills to defend those others thought weak. Dr. Park published his research on human neuroplasticity, leading to breakthroughs that helped 12 other species. Brox and Velsha became advocates for changing how the military judged potential, arguing that the strongest warriors were often the least obvious ones. And in the Academy's memorial garden, they had placed a stone marker honoring Baek Yoonji, master of Korean martial arts, grandmother to a legend. The inscription read, "We bend but never break." Jiwoo touched the window, feeling the slight vibrations of the ship's engines through the glass. Pain was still her constant companion. Every day brought challenges that her condition made harder. But she had learned to see her difference as information rather than limitation. Cadet Han, Thexval,